I spent an hour this morning doing a high-level development appraisal for a client on a site that isn't worth nearly what it's on the market for. So I've just recorded a brief video just to show you the process that I've gone through. There might be people who are actually interested in purchasing this site, so they might find it useful themselves just for another set of eyes maybe to have a look at it. And it also might be useful for you to see the principles that I follow when I'm assessing a site, so I can separate the wheat from the chaff. I'll just quickly talk through the planning, and then I'll do a development appraisal, right? So I'll just show you, right, then is I've taken the stuff that I do at a high level, I've put it onto an easy to understand sheet, right? So hopefully, people looking to get into small developments find it useful, right? So this is the plot I was looking at. So this is Esker Hill in Lucan. Full planning permission in place for 7 5-bedroom houses, just over 900 square foot each. Blah blah blah, and there's a planning reference which is obviously useful. So obviously, the first thing I'll do is I'll check the price per stand. So the land's on the market for 1.657 units, which is 235 grand a stand, which I just know from assessed on the sites in the area and been involved in purchases that is very high. I know they're 5-bedroom houses, right? But nonetheless, it's a big site. There's a lot of infrastructure. 235 grand seems high. Like I said, the next protocol is to go on to the planning portal. I think this is where a lot of people get lazy. I think, oh, I'll leave it to somebody else, right? And that comes at a time and a cost. The next thing, obviously, you need to do is go through the process of reading the documents on the planning portal. I think this is where people get lazy. They kind of hope for the best, or they bury their head in the sand, or they expect somebody else to do it for them, right? Ultimately, if you don't know how to do this yourself, you're leaving yourself massively exposed. The other thing to consider, right, this might be an unpopular opinion, but it is true, right? The majority of sites only end up on the market because there is something wrong with them that is preventing the developer from building them out themselves, right? That's not always the case. I'm not saying don't look on the market for sites. You will find stuff that maybe you can have a look at, see from a different set of eyes, and you can negotiate around any abnormal costs. But it's very rare you see something on the market that is a deal, right? It's on you to get into the detail, find out what the problems are, and incorporate those into a correct land value, right? And with the greatest respect to the agents who are selling the site, it's not their job to do that for you either, right? They're going to try and sell the site for top dollar and hope that the biggest idiot comes along and doesn't spot the issues with the site, right? So it's only taken me an hour to read through this site, right? But I've already seen maybe half a dozen or so issues, which have kind of confirmed my suspicion that it's most likely not worth what they're asking for in terms of land value, right? So, like I said, this wouldn't be my usual appraisal document. I've just put it on one sheet just for the purpose of this video, right? But we've got 7 houses, right? Each is 1,921 square foot each, right? So I've got a total square foot of 13,500 square foot, right? The first thing I do then is I'll look at the cost element, right? So the asking price of the land is 1.65, right? Actually, it doesn't include stand B, does it? So we need to add that on. The price per stand, therefore, is 235 grand. So that's the 1650 divided by 7 units. When you're speaking with developers or agents or I don't know, lenders, right, the first thing they're going to ask you pretty much is what's the cost per stand, and anyone worth their salt will know whether you're in the right ballpark. So certainly helpful if you're starting to assess sites, just to get to know the rough sale values per plot in a given area, right? So that equates to 122 square foot asking price for the land. Why is that important? Because I'll know in certain areas maybe whether land is 300 square foot, 400 square foot, etc. And then I can grasp the difference between the sold value, maybe 400 quid a square foot, and the asking price for the land. And I know what I've got in the middle for build costs, profit, and finance, right? That's the reason we need to know these numbers early doors, right? And then I know roughly to build those units all in, assuming no abnormals, including architects, fees, engineers, surveys, consultants, around about 225 square foot, right? So I know lenders will be looking for a minimum of 180 a square foot just for the build element, and then we need to add those elements on. So just for the purpose of a high level appraisal, 225 a square foot is not a bad number in that area, right? So we look at the value, right? What if we build these out, what are we going to sell them for, right? So using rough numbers, again, I know in Lucan, sales values can range, depending upon unit size, and obviously there's a cap in each area that you won't go over, but I think it's reasonable to assume that maybe 450 a square foot in that area isn't unreasonable. Obviously extra VAT as well, which we don't include. So 450 times the square footage, 1921, right, means that each unit should sell for in the region of 865. Like I said, I'm not getting too involved in development values, and you'll see why in a minute, right? But I think I'm probably a bit high. If not, somebody might tell me I'm wrong, but I base the numbers on 865, okay? I times our 865 by 7, which gives me the gross development value, known as the GDV, right? So a GDV is just over 6 million quid. So this isn't rocket science. All we're trying to work out is, right, what's my total cost? What's the total value? And we're deducting one from the other to see what the value is. I said we establish the residual land value. Okay, so I said this is my GDV, just over 6 million quid. Let's deduct all of the costs from that to see where we stand, what our profit is, right? So land value, like we said above, deduct 1650. We deduct the build costs for the houses and the curtilage only. So by curtilage, you could mean maybe 5-10 meters of rear garden, and then maybe the same again at the front, usually a little bit less, okay? And obviously the groundworks, in terms of foundations, the superstructure, the fit out, so it's, I suppose it's turnkey ready for somebody to come in there. What that doesn't include, which I've included below, is the road and infrastructure works, right? So I've just got this plan up here, right? When I talk about the curtilage and the 225 a square foot, right, or 3 million quid, yeah, right, I'm talking about this here, right? It's just the plot. So on top of that, and this is something that our developers are missing, and I keep banging on about this, so apologies if I'm like a broken record, right? But you're going to need to bring in a service road. Obviously, there's not just the road itself, it's all the services that are serving the actual dwellings. There is shared amenity space, so soft landscaping. There's hard landscaping that needs to be done, cycle paths, bin stores, cycle sheds, all that type of stuff. And then crucially on this side as well, the boundary treatment. So that's fencing. There's like a massive boundary on this side. Like the fencing itself is going to be really expensive. So you need to make sure you include that as an additional cost. There's also some landscaping measures as well. So there's some tree planting, shrub planting, and then, you've got a few other bits of landscaping, that type of thing. And there's some tree protection works as well. So those are additional to the 3 million quid just to build the houses. Irish water fees, as we know now, they're no longer being waived. So I've just allowed £7,000 for 7 units, which is obviously 50 grand. And then crucially, right, again, this is the stuff that people will miss, right? If you go into the conditions of the approval, so you'll get the approval, blah, 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 and then they'll go through the conditions. So the developer has been given an approval to commence with the development subject to X, Y, and Z, right? And most of the time, these conditions come with a cost, and most people don't bother to read them, right? So it's not just this document. You need to read the document to relate to these conditions, right? So, for instance, condition 5, bats and ecology, right? So they refer to a report on condition 5, which you need to find in the planning approval, right? And then you'll see there's a 72-page report, right, with all sorts of mitigation measures, right? And there's also sort of time constraints in this one relating to bats and birds, right? So not only are you into the mitigation measures in terms of looking after things from an ecology point of view, there's also a constraint there in terms of when you can carry out the development, right? So I said, I haven't gone into the detail of our report because it's 72 pages, but I've allocated a cost against our 15 grand, right? Condition 6, again, conservation. There's something there in relation to archaeology and a millstone that needs to be protected, taken away from site, safely stored and brought back, okay? That's going to come with a cost. Okay, so I put 10 grand in there. There's a 56k bond that needs to be paid. So developers will usually procure these, right? Again, costs are laid 7.5 grand in there. And then contributions, right? So again, this is why so many developers were scrambling earlier this year to start their developments, is to avoid paying these fees. Now, they're no longer going to be waived. That might come back under, another government, who knows? But ultimately, there's 150 grand that needs to be paid in terms of local authority contributions for infrastructure, amenity, education, all that type of thing in the area. So that needs to be paid by whoever purchases the site. And then there's also a costed to discharge the remaining conditions. So even there's a planning permission in place. I wouldn't call it a ready to go planning permission. There's still loads of design issues that need to be ironed out, submitted to local authority and approved, right? Again, time and cost. So being quite laid back with that 15 grand, to be honest with you, but there will be something there that's going to cost the developer down the line. And then finally, a contingency, right? So I've only allowed 5% on the actual curtilage cost, 5% of the 3 million quid. When you actually go for funding, they'll look 5% on everything. So just to give you a summary, right, of how all this looks in reality with the land value, right? The subtotal of all the costs pre-finance is just over 5.5 million quid. The finance of that, I mean, you might get 8%, you might get 12%, but just say it's somewhere in the middle. So based on a 12-month program, which again is optimistic, isn't it? Given all the mitigation measures and the design that needs to be finalised, etc., etc. You're probably looking at finance of around about 450 grand. Okay, again, needs to be deducted from the land value, which gives me an all-in total cost of just over 6 million quid. We've already established that the GDV was about 6 million and 51 grand. So let's assume in all of that above is correct. There's no other abnormals above and over the contingency, sales values hold, etc., etc. A developer could expect to earn 33 grand, which is half a percentage point, right? So it's obviously not good enough. So look, this process itself to type up this sheet takes 5 minutes, but the devil is in the details. So you need to make sure you're reading those planners reports. If you don't know how to do them or you don't want to do them, you need to get somebody else to do it for you. But it's crucial that it's done. And like I said, just make sure you're looking into these abnormal costs, because I think the reality is what most people are doing is something like this. They're getting rid of all that. They're going land build cost at 225 quid a square foot and detracting that from the GDV. So you think, 20% and £1 million. It's not the case, because you've missed everything, right? So just bear that in mind. Like I said, it might work for somebody at the right value, but in terms of the asking price of 1.65 million quid, it's not a deal. Hopefully you'll find that useful.